Hi everyone, I'm Louise Rumball, founder of Open House, and welcome to our second workshop. Thank you for joining us in this beautiful, beautiful reading room at Fora, Soho. Founded in 2016, Fora is the tailored workspace that provides its residents with spaces to be happy and healthy in order to deliver their best work. Fora marries style and function to create dynamic, safe workplaces that drive productivity, inspiration, and collaboration. So with our thank yous out of the way, it's now on to the workshop, and we are so excited to have you join us. Thank you for giving us your time today. 2020 has been an incredibly challenging year with all things coronavirus. And as we're now into winter and with the end of 2020 fast approaching, I know that there's a lot of mixed feelings out there about how the year has already come to an end. Certainly been an interesting year for me, and I'm so happy to be here with Dr. Helene so we can work through this in a bit more detail, and hopefully you can take away some helpful tips and tricks to end your year in the right way.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Helene, a clinical psychologist, and in today's workshop we're going to be going through 5 things. We're going to be thinking about seasonal affective disorder and giving you tips and tricks on how to beat the winter blues. We're also going to be talking about loneliness and how to manage being alone during lockdown. Then we're going to be looking at a locus of control exercise to help you really focus your energy in a positive way rather than drain energy in unnecessary worries. And finally, we'll be taking a compassionate and reflective look back at the year and setting some really positive goals for next year. So, without further ado, let's get cracking.
Yes, and just one quick reminder, which is that we have the Q&A function going. So please do put through any questions that you have about the session. We're going to pick up a couple throughout, and any that we can't get to, we will be sure that we can get to them at a later date, so we can provide you all the answers that you need. So yeah, thank you. And I'm really excited to do this with you. I feel like it's been a difficult year for all. And I know that now we're in winter, things just get a bit more difficult. So I think this will be a great workshop for everyone.
Yeah. So obviously this is a Corona Christmas. It is very different to the Christmases we've had. But historically, how have you coped with the winter months?
So I think it's interesting because if you had asked me that last year, I would have said absolutely awfully. I feel like I spent years spending Christmas in another country because my parents spend a lot of time living in South Africa, and I used to live in Dubai, so sometimes I'd be in Dubai. So historically not good. I almost was scared of the dark, scared of the cold, the short days. Yeah, so not great, but this year definitely feeling a bit more positive about it.
Well, that's really good to hear. And I think, you know, some of us do cope with the long winters by getting away, and it's just something we can't rely on during this Corona period. Are you missing having a holiday to look forward to?
Yeah, so every Christmas we would be in South Africa with my parents. And this year, obviously, we just don't know if that is going to be possible. So I think it just puts the long, cold winter it's just sat out there waiting for me. So it definitely makes it harder, but also makes me understand that I just have to be able to be happy where I am and not put my conditional happiness on something in the future.
Sounds really good. Sounds like you're kind of mastering this winter and finding acceptance. Do you think that seasonal affective disorder is something that you've experienced before?
So I think that in the last few years when my mental health was probably really not very good or wasn't as under as control as it is now, I definitely think it would have really impacted me. I don't know if I was ever like diagnosed with it, but I think that it probably meant lower moods and just more like teary and yeah. So I don't know if that's it, but I definitely think it's had historically impacts on my mental health for sure.
Yeah, and so I think we're all vulnerable to feeling a little bit more lethargic, a bit more sad during the winter months. But seasonal affective disorder in its true form happens to about 1 in 15 of us. And it's triggered by the shorter days. So that affects our melatonin level and it changes our circadian rhythms, which means that we often want to sleep more. We feel more tired. We're also more susceptible to feeling like rejected and low. So it can either trigger depression or just worsen your symptoms. and it can be really debilitating for some people. I mean, have you experienced some of those symptoms?
Yeah, I think I definitely have had bouts of depression over the last few years, and I never really connected it to anything. But looking back, I reckon that, yeah, it probably was just made worse by the cold and the dark. And for me, I find it so upsetting when you look outside at 3 p.m. and it's like getting dark, or you wake up in the morning and it's dark already. So, yeah, maybe.
And what do you do to manage that, the long, dreary winter months?
So I think something that I do, which isn't a good thing, but as you know, my default coping mechanism for anything is just be busy. So I think that helps me kind of just like move through things constantly. Whereas I can imagine if I take myself out of my own position and put myself in someone else's, if I was to just stay at home all the time and be super lethargic, it could be quite bad. But as I've gone on this journey and with you and with myself, I definitely understand the importance of coping strategies. So I take more active steps now. I take a vitamin D spray every morning, and I only started that like last week, so I can't pretend that I've been doing it.
So many people have a vitamin D deficiency and just don't know about it. So there's no harm in getting a vitamin D spray over these winter months and just making sure your levels are topped up.
I also read that it's directly connected to the efficiency of your immune system. So I just thought that with everything pandemic going on, it might just be like an extra boost to the immune system, wouldn't harm.
Definitely. And for those of us who are like mixed race, maybe originally from a hotter climate, we're more susceptible to vitamin D deficiencies. So definitely a good idea.
Vitamin D, people.
So
I do that, and I honestly, Himalayan salt lamps have absolutely changed my life. It sounds ridiculous, but every evening when it's dark, I put them on. I have 4. It's extreme, but I have 1 in my office, 1 in my living room, and 2 in my bedroom, 1 either side of my bed. And when I put them on, the whole room kind of glows orange, and it's just so comforting. Like I always say, it feels like I'm in utero, like I'm a baby in like my mum's stomach. It sounds weird. But I find that it's like really warming subconsciously, because obviously it doesn't have any heat. But I do that.
Well, and I think that's really important. What you're talking about is getting your environment right. So particularly now, a lot of us are working from home. We're spending a lot of time in our 4 walls. It's so important to get that environment, the atmosphere right in your home. So one way to beat seasonal affective disorder is to declutter, get a nice environment, warm lighting, soft music, maybe even incense and
love
diffusers.
Incense has changed my life. I love it so much. It just adds a whole nother dimension to a room. And another thing, it sounds silly, but such an old lady, but I really think that a hot water bottle or an electric blanket do wonders, because I've lived in houses over the years where, oh my goodness, like even if you heated them, the heat would just never come through in the way you needed it. And luckily mine isn't like that now, but there's nothing worse than like going to bed or waking up freezing cold. I just think it starts the day just like, oh, this is horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of, as we have these short days, we can struggle a little bit with our sleep. We may struggle to fall asleep and then wake up too late. So one way to help you get to sleep is to have a warm bath, so that your core body temperature is heated up. And as you start to cool down, it has a soporific or sleepy effect on you.
Soporific?
Yeah.
Word of the day. I literally never heard that before.
Wearing those warm socks, making sure that you're warm as you fall asleep is really important.
That's another thing. I also never owned a pair of slippers. Like my mom was always like, oh, do you want some slippers? And I was like, no, I do not. And then I got some slippers. And I was like, this is life-changing, purely because your feet don't touch the cold floor or like slightly colder floor. So I just feel warmer. So I'm turning into a proper old lady with my salt lamps.
You just need some cats now.
Yeah, not doing that. Sorry, I'm actually allergic to cats, so that was a big no from me. Dogs, I can do dogs though.
Yeah. So those are some really lovely ideas for setting your environment. But some people will actually be quite affected by seasonal affective disorder, and there are a couple evidence-based things that you can do. So buying a good quality light box to simulate the blue light from the day is really important. Something I personally have is an alarm clock that wakes you up with natural
I've got
daylight.
one of them. And you can put sounds on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that. I like that as well.
So I really like that. It's a gentle way to wake up when my child decides not to wake up at 5 a.m. Another thing is, during the summer months, perhaps some of us got into the routine of going for a walk or getting our exercise after work. And now, when it's cold and dark outside, it can put us off. So perhaps changing your schedule so that you get out in the morning, get as much natural daylight as you can, and then also get your exercise in. It's really, really important.
Yeah. I found that that's been something for me that's been really, really helpful, which is that I know if I don't get my walk in the morning, I just won't do it. So get up, 100 layers on, go to get a coffee or take a coffee out with me and put a podcast in or some music and just get that walk in. Or also I try and, if I'm going to see a client or to meet a friend outside, I'll try and walk there rather than getting on the tube. So yeah, definitely getting that vitamin D and just like the fresh air in as well.
Absolutely.
In the morning, has to be the morning. Otherwise, walking in darkness, I'm like, this is horrible.
Yeah, but importantly, walking in darkness isn't going to improve your seasonal affective disorder. You need to be getting as much natural sunlight as you can. Now, I know that a lot of us are just chained to our desks, in front of Zoom and video calls, and I think it's really important to try and speak to your colleagues and your managers about taking some of these meetings on a walk, because it's really easy to spend the whole day in meetings and then the whole evening doing all the work that comes out of those meetings. But prioritizing your mental health at this point is really important.
So critical.
And being honest with yourself, if you wake up every morning just not wanting to get up, not wanting to start the day, that's a really important signal that things aren't quite right and that you need to make some changes. And if that is the case, also don't be afraid to get some help. So cognitive behaviour therapy has a strong evidence base for helping seasonal affective disorder. And also with all of these changes and challenges happening at this time, it can be really helpful just to feel supported and nurtured by a therapist and have a little bit of self-care time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're preaching to the choir here. I'm like the biggest pro-therapy person ever. I feel like what we've gone through this year has been a whirlwind. And please, if you need to talk to someone, please try and get that organised. I wholeheartedly think it will make your life a better place.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's come out of our therapy journey together is that just because you can do it all, it doesn't mean that you have to. And I think that before we would have these natural breaks in our day as we would commute to work and leave work, whereas now a lot of people, and myself included, can just work all through the day without stopping. So it's really important to set boundaries and choose those tasks that are really going to move the dial. Yeah. Don't just take everything on because technically you can. I
feel like I knew that was, she was talking to the camera, but really she was talking to me. Yeah, I agree. And I think that that's why I'm doing better this year, is because I've gone on this journey and I understand the importance of picking the small things that move the dial and repeating them frequently and doing them every day. Whereas last year and all the other years, it would have just been like, go, 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 keep going. And then all of a sudden it's like, just, a bit nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we've put in the worksheet for today is a morning routine. So often if we can just start our day with some good practices of meditation, of exercise, of journaling, maybe of connecting with friends, eating right. If we can just get that done in the morning, then it sets us up for the rest of the day. Sometimes if we are waiting to do an evening yoga class or something like that, it might not happen, and then a few days can go by and you can lose the momentum. So in the worksheet, you can plan a couple things, setting a regular wake time, setting some rituals, just to help keep you on track.
Yeah. And I think that since I've started to do that, I've seen such a huge change in really just like my life in general, which sounds ridiculous. And I know how easy it is just to not do it. I've done my entire life not doing it. but just forcing myself to do the things that I know are good for the best version of me, I found have been helpful. So yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely. And, I think our circumstances are quite different. So I'm mum, and it can be very difficult to start my day with mindfulness and meditation. But there are ways maybe of speaking with your partner about taking it in turns, or perhaps even getting up an hour earlier and going to bed an hour earlier.
So you're going to get up at 4 a.m.
Yeah, well, this is something that my husband decided he was going to do.
Oh, really?
Because he was really getting slammed at work,
Yeah.
and he was realising he wasn't having any time to meditate, journal and exercise, which was keeping him on an even keel. So we spoke together about how we were going to make sure he could do that every day. And
I love that. I've definitely
really
seen that
helping.
on Instagram. There's a couple of mums who say that hour or half hour before their kids wake up is what keeps them centered and grounded. And even though for not a normal person, but someone without kids would be like, whoa, that is so early. Like if you told me to wake up at 4:30 to do my morning routine, I would just be like, I'm not listening to you, I'm leaving. But I think it could be that time is so important.
Yeah.
Just for you on your own before mum life starts.
Yeah, exactly. And there's quite a famous book called The 5 a.m. Club, which is about, people who really make a difference in their life are willing to sacrifice an hour in the morning to, work on their personal growth and development.
Yeah, I love that. And also I feel like just for anyone at home that's like, oh my God, I hate the 5 a.m. club because they can never do that. I think that actually the meaning, because I used to get up at 5:30 every single day, and I was just... It was too much, too intense, too much like the hustle life. But actually, the mentality of the book is if you just ignore the 5 a.m., just focus on like the 1 hour before your day would normally start. So if you don't have to be at your desk until 9:30, then focus on getting up at 7:30, so you can get that 7:30 to 8:30 in. Don't be scared by the 5 a.m.
Exactly.
Because I feel like that used to be me, and now I'm striving for balance. So 5 a.m. I'm like, no, I don't think that's good for me.
Yeah, and it's just tapping into your higher self, tapping into the person you want to be given these circumstances. Yeah. Okay, so we've spoken quite a lot about changing your habits, but I think this period also invites accepting where we are now. And there's a really great book that Louise and I have read called The Active Acceptance of Sadness, and that's by Catherine May. And in that, she speaks about winter being a time for hibernating, for regrouping, relaxing and chilling. So, particularly September and October can be months that are pretty full on, lots of changes, start of the academic year. And this is really a time to accept that you need to slow down, you need to rest, you need to regroup. And, I think that sometimes you feel that not doing any work means not progressing. But I think that that's a fallacy, really. Yeah. It's really important to have times to slow down, get some mental space, and think about the direction that you want to go in life. Not just be on autopilot, not just firefight, but really just time to be with yourself and to listen to your intuition or that inner voice that knows where you want to go.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that as I've also developed on my own kind of like spiritual journey, I learned a lot about how everything in life is a balance and cyclical, and everything comes and goes. And I think when I started to understand a little bit more that winter is required so that we can then go back into spring and summer, I've started to treat it definitely with some more compassion and just acknowledge it can't be summer forever, just like it can't be good emotions forever, The bad ones come, and then the painful ones come, and then the beautiful ones come. Everything is cyclical, and I think that it's enabled me to just be like, okay, this is happening, so let's lean into it and just do what I can do and nurture and rest and recharge.
Yeah, and celebrate that time, that invitation where nothing's going on really during this lockdown period. The weather's terrible, so enjoy the opportunity to have an early night and a bath and a hot chocolate, and relish in it rather than feel angry that you can't do what you usually do.
Yeah, I think that mindset shift is really important for sure.
Yeah, and there's a type of therapy called acceptance acceptance and commitment therapy, which is all about finding that balance. So you need to work on practicing mindfulness so that you accept where you are, and you also kind of start doing the problem solving to think about some small changes you can make that will make a big difference.
I love that. I feel like we should
let's have some
a look
questions.
and see if there is things. Oh, there are lots of things coming in. So this one is good. This one's good. Okay. I always find that I get more depressed in the winter months. I cope with it by drinking more, eating more, shopping more, and I just really never feel like I'm in control during this period. Do you have any tips for me? That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure all of us can relate to that. I think, we seek comfort, we like to feel better, and so Christmas really invites that opportunity to indulge, to do retail therapy, which isn't a thing, not recommended in the NICE guidelines. So sometimes we try to almost fill a gap, a deficit, a hole in our lives with these external things, and I really invite this woman sorry, this woman maybe to look at what is maybe missing in your life, and what might be a more wholesome way of filling that gap. So perhaps you're feeling a little bit sad, and maybe you're not really enjoying your job so much, and so you want to feel better and have an instant gratification. Maybe this is the time now to look at changing your job, or speaking to your manager about promotion, or just focusing a little bit less on your job and more on some of the things that really bring you joy. Because ultimately, and Louise has been through this journey, things like alcohol don't fundamentally bring us joy.
No way, not at all. And I think that what I take from that question is that these things are coping mechanisms, and something that I talk about a lot is how we have these coping mechanisms that really are just like escapism and distraction and avoidance, and I feel well versed on being able to talk about them because I have gone through almost all of them. And so I think that for me, awareness is the first point, acknowledging that I'm drinking more, or I'm eating more, or I'm shopping more. That's the first point, is just acknowledging it. And then, like Dr. Helene said, asking yourself why. Why is that? What are you trying to distract from? Do you feel lonely? Do you feel despair about the year that's gone by? Do you feel, there's so many things. It could be that Christmas is triggering for you in some manner, or that generally just something feels a bit empty inside of you, or you feel a bit depressed and you don't even realize it, or you suffer with anxiety, so you're trying to numb it out. So I think that it's just great that you can even admit that, and thank you for the question, because acknowledgement and awareness is the first step to anything. So I think it's great, and hopefully you can start to move forward from here and potentially look at other ways of dealing with those feelings that underlie it. Because it's really about what's underneath the drinking and the partying and the eating. It's not so much about them, just those activities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this question also links in quite well with our Locus of Control exercise that I wanted to bring us onto. So this is a CBT, or cognitive behaviour therapy concept, which helps people who particularly are suffering from anxiety. So anxiety is categorised by sort of an intolerance of uncertainty, and also people who are anxious tend to catastrophise or fear the worst about what's going to happen in the future. So one way to kind of try to counteract that is thinking about where you have control in your life and where you don't. So
to a control freak over here.
Yeah. So Louise, you've had a little look at this worksheet already, which you can all find attached. So what are some of the things that you worry about generally? And then we'll put them into the categories.
Oh, goodness. So things I worry about generally, probably where I'm going with my life. Am I making the right decisions? Is my career going in the right direction? Where is Mr. Right? Where is he? Am I being a good friend and family and partner to all the people around me? I think those are the main things. And, you know, am I healthy? Am I looking after myself? What's going to happen with coronavirus? Am I ever going to be able to go on holiday again?
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, probably some of those things.
Yeah, no, that's great. So most of those are actually in your locus of control. You can actually affect how healthy you are, how you do in your career and things like that. And what you can't affect is, you know, what the restrictions are on coronavirus. And so there's almost no point in worrying too much about those things. You know, something that I do for my self-care is not watch the news too much, because I find that it really gets me down. It isn't something that I can control. So I'd rather not invest my energy there. But what I can control is how often I connect with my friends, the time I want to spend on my career. So how about for you? Do you have specific things that you want to focus on, things that are in your locus of control that you want to prioritise?
So I wrote down a couple of bullet points just before the session.
Yeah.
And I think what was interesting when I did the exercise is that I've come a long way. I think I really used to focus on things outside of my control. But what I've put here is that what's inside my control are my decisions and habits that I do every day, what I can do for those around me and myself to be the best version of myself. Small things like being able to go and walk outside. Like I can make that decision to go and get that vitamin D.
Prioritise it.
Or to do some exercise or movement. And then in terms of things which are outside of my control, this one I think might really resonate with people at home. Things that are outside of my control are what other people think about me. And I think that
you've got quite a public profile, don't you? So it must feel like quite a lot of pressure maybe to have followers or to have likes.
Yeah, I think it's just even going one step deeper than that is like we've spoken about before. I feel like ever since my childhood, I felt like I had to be a certain version of me. And so I feel like looking back, I've seen a lot about how decisions I made, or I really cared about what I looked like or what my body looked like, because I felt like I was being compared to people around me, and probably comes from going to a competitive school environment and, you know, just always wanting to perform and achieve and wanting my dad to be proud of me and wanting my mum to be proud of me. But now I've just come to this great place where I understand that all I can control is what is in here. And I know I'm a good, kind person. And as long as I have some people around me that think that too, then that's great. And as long as I'm not actively doing anything to hurt people, the wider population, then others' opinions, I can't control them all. And if I wanted to, I'd be crippled by it. So actually kind of letting that go as outside my control, just focusing on what I can control has been, I think, nourishing.
Yeah, that's really, really great to hear. And it sounds like you've really grasped that concept of, you know, there are plenty of things actually that you can control. So if you are feeling low, you might feel that that's outside of your locus of control. And sometimes it is to a certain extent. It can be due to a chemical imbalance in your brain. But actually there are a number of things that are in your control that you can do and that you can prioritise. One thing that's coming up a lot in my clinical work is people worrying a lot about loved ones and friends, maybe, you know, taking too many drugs or being really depressed. And you may feel that it's in your control to save them. And
in there as well.
Yeah. And obviously as a therapist, I'm often sort of between that. Am I in control of helping that person or not? And I think what's really important is that you focus on leading almost by example. So don't preach at somebody and don't tell them what to do. Don't say, oh, stop drinking or just cheer up.
That's the worst. Never say cheer up. That's a very bad thing to say.
No, definitely. What you can do is just hold the space and accept that it's outside of your control how they feel and what their behaviours are. And at best, you can just lead by an example and hope that maybe how you choose to lead your life might inspire them a little bit or might give them some new ideas.
And also, just to add on to that, I would also say that I have been in a situation many times over my life where I have tried to save people and help them and make them see the light, and I could see the good in them, even though everyone else saw the bad. And so I wanted them to bring that good to the surface. But actually, often the person that ends up getting hurt by trying to save someone is really you. And so I think that sometimes if people really are struggling around you during this period, like Helene said, it's great to hold space for them and to tell them everything can be great. You need to take active steps to do so. But if it is getting to a point where it is really impacting you and your mental health, also have enough love and trust for your own boundaries that if you need to step back at this time of year, because I'm sure things can be very stressful in lockdown. You know, there's been an increase in drinking, substance abuse, I think domestic violence. But you can't control
you can become very embroiled in someone else's problems, and it's definitely something as a therapist that we have to really master, is kind of knowing our boundaries and our limits on how much we can help somebody. So if you know somebody who's really struggling, I'd recommend really listening to them. Don't try to fix the problem, don't try to give them advice because you'll patronize them, but really hear them and really try to reflect back what you're hearing so you get a deep understanding. That's going to be very, very helpful. If you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by that person's difficulties and maybe you're not in a great place as well, just support that person with getting the right help. So
I love that. I always think it's good as well, if you need to talk to someone, just to ask them, do you have the emotional bandwidth to have this discussion? Because I found that that's really amazing in terms of my friends being able to say, honestly, I love you, but right now I'm just not in a good place and I actually can't help you here. And then that's okay. You know, you choose not to be offended by it and actually just acknowledge that. And then
yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, as a therapist, we receive regular supervision, we have our own therapy so that we can take on other people's things. But not everyone, you know, not all friends are in that position. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Talking of friends.
Yes. Let's talk about loneliness.
Yes.
So Louise, I know that you live on your own, and I'm really curious about how you're coping with lockdown, as you can't really meet up easily with people face to face.
Yeah, so I have to be honest, and it's not something that I've spoken about too much because I don't want to make people that really are struggling feel even worse. But I think that I've been fine during really the whole pandemic. Okay. And I think that the reason for that isn't necessarily that I'm just really resilient or unemotional, because in fact I'm probably quite the opposite. I think it's more just that my default, as we've discussed in previous sessions, is just go, 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 busy, busy, busy. So I think I've just kept myself very busy. So generally I've been fine, and I've also been in a relationship, so I've had someone with me at all times, so I haven't experienced like the chronic loneliness that people might have in the first lockdown, particularly when you just couldn't see anyone. But I definitely feel like I am missing my friends, and I feel like everything's become very technology based. Like I make active efforts to voice note people and call people, but I'm just missing like being able to hug someone, or do you know what I mean? So I'd say I'm fine, but it's just starting to take its toll slightly on me in terms of technology is like putting a gap between the real human connection that I think I would like.
Yeah, I think, and that's such a good point, is that we can maybe spend time talking to our friends, but actually being able to hold them and embrace them is something that's really important. And obviously, we all know, most of us accept that we sort of have evolved from apes, and so grooming used to be something that we spent a lot of time doing. Physical touch releases oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone. It makes us feel good.
I want to say such a toucher. That sounds really weird, but I am so pro physical touch. Like even if I go home, I'll literally like cuddle my mum on the sofa, and I know that a lot of people would not do that, but I think that it's like a source of comfort for me, and I hope that if you have the opportunity to have someone that you can even just have a prolonged hug with, I think it really can help. I don't understand obviously about the chemicals in the brain, but it just seems to really, really have a positive impact.
Yeah, of course. And also physical touch and oxytocin can help with feelings of chronic stress, depression. And there are even studies that suggest that loneliness can actually reduce our lifespan.
I read that, it's crazy.
It's really important to try to connect with people. And Louise, I wonder whether you've been using work as a way maybe of not tapping into loneliness, so maybe as a way of avoiding thinking about it.
Yeah, I think I have done that my entire life. I think that whilst we speak a lot about the traditional coping strategies like drinking, drug taking, shopping, exercise, actually and because we've gone through this journey recently together, I kind of just had this light bulb moment in the last few weeks where I was like, oh my goodness, the biggest distraction out of all of them has been the work. So yeah, I would definitely say that I just keep moving, and even though I know I should slow down and face up to what I'm feeling, it's just easier to just keep going. So I have to be very active in terms of like trying to not do that.
Yeah. And that's, it happens quite a lot. So, I have a lot of people come to me and say, I'm really lonely. But when we look at their week, it's filled with work. And so there isn't much opportunity actually to connect with people. And sometimes it can be helpful to be quite deliberate about social connection.
I actually schedule them into my diary as if they were a meeting. That is like the least loving thing ever.
Well, it's not, no.
Do you know what I mean though? It feels a bit clinical, but honestly, if I don't do that, the week just packs up, and then it's been another week when I haven't seen someone, or another week when I haven't gone on a walk. So maybe if you are busy, or your tendency is to be busy, actively scheduling, or even holding, like sometimes I will block out a half day or a day where I'm like, I can tell that life is going way too fast. And I need to block this out to provide me with some space, and vice versa. Maybe if people are the other way, where they go into themselves and retreat, putting that active like diarising in to see people or do something might be helpful.
Definitely. I think scheduling, if you're busy, and you just accept that you're busy, so scheduling in is really important. But there are also ways of doubling up. If you are so busy, maybe going for a walk with somebody in person.
That's my favourite, because you get the walk in and the vitamin D in and the friend in.
Yeah, perfect. And if your friend lives too far away, then scheduling with them that they could be walking and you could be walking and talking together.
I like that.
Voice notes are nice, but maybe rather than watching your favourite Netflix thing in the evening, schedule in a regular chat with a friend. With one of my friends, we have regular yoga sessions every week, and then we catch up a bit at the end.
Like via technology?
Yeah, so we choose a YouTube video and then we do it at the same time, and then we have a little chat.
That's so nice.
So we kind of double up. And I really like your idea of sort of voice notes and things, but maybe a way of making it a bit more personal would be sending a card, sending some flowers.
I love doing that. I feel like I've got so much more purpose, and I just feel amazing since I've taken time to make sure I send all my friends a birthday card, or send them flowers if something good or bad happens. I feel like those things today as well, they just go so far in a world of digital technology.
Yeah, and of course, you're giving your friend that happiness, but you're also getting happiness by the act of doing
Driving it.
Yeah. And if you want to go one step further, then, writing a gratitude letter to somebody that you love about, all the reasons why they're so fantastic, and then maybe even reading it to them in person.
Oh, that makes me a bit nervous.
Yeah, it's actually really proven to improve your well-being, and obviously improving great for them.
That's so sweet.
And we spoke about, our friends maybe being in a tough place. And, sometimes we just can't fix it. We can't fix if they've lost a loved one, if they're shielding. We can't fix that, but we can just try and inject some positivity into their day.
I love that.
Okay, so
the topic that I never want to talk about,
relationships. Yeah. So, Louise, you've been in a sort of complicated relationship. Where are you at the moment with that?
Yeah, and just for everyone at home, I know I get lots of questions asking about it. One of the reasons that I just don't talk about it that much is out of respect for the person. In all honesty, there's some people that don't mind talking about things, and then there's some people that do. And in short, I have been in a relationship, and it got very intense very, very quickly, just because in the first lockdown, we just ended up 1 month into the relationship, just bam, going into lockdown together. And it's been the most beautiful and transformative experience. Like, it's been incredible. I'm a different person than I was when I met him, and I'm so grateful for everything. But at the same time, it's been quite a triggering situation. We have brought each other's almost shadow sides to the forefront, and it's just been quite challenging. And I think that with lockdown particularly, it makes it almost hard to decide to part ways, because I feel like everything's been so clouded. Like, do I feel like this because we were locked in a house together, or do I feel like this because would it have been different if we hadn't gone into lockdown? It's just been, I really have struggled to work out how I feel and what the best step forward is. So it's just become quite like a beautifully messy, prolonged mess.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right that lockdown brings its own challenges. You've perhaps relied on him more for that like physical touch and companionship than maybe you would have if you were meeting your friends. But equally, maybe it's been a catalyst and shone a light on the cracks in your relationship because you've been together more than you would in normal time.
Literally both of those things. And I think that it's been so beautiful. It's been without a doubt the most incredible relationship I've ever had. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't going to be issues in it. And I think it's just, when you don't have, like, when someone doesn't cheat on someone, or someone doesn't actively say, I don't love you anymore, I don't want to be with you, it's hard to almost know whether it should end or not. It's been,
I think you're in a predicament that I see so often, both professionally and amongst my friends, is you sort of hit 30 and you find a great guy who you care about, you love, and you know will be a great dad, sort of tick, tick, tick. But then there's something missing. Maybe you're going in different directions in your life, and it can be so difficult because you might be saying goodbye to somebody you fundamentally know you have a good connection with and is a good guy. And, you know, I think in your case, you're going to being single and to maybe never meeting someone like that again.
Perfect. Great. I'm never going to be anyone ever again.
But I guess that's the reality.
It's the fear, is that for sure. Although I try not to live with that much fear. I very much trust that everything in life is happening as it should for a reason, and you just have to go with it. But I just think that for anyone at home, I just think that lockdown really increases the intensity of relationships, and I'm sure that maybe people are staying in relationships that they shouldn't because it's that companionship, or that people, I don't know. I just think it's a difficult time for relationships. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think fear, when you're making these decisions, it's really important to acknowledge the presence of fear, because, you know, you might have a lot to unwind. You might be unwinding from living together. You might be sort of in your 30s or mid-30s and concerned about your biological clock. There are a lot of factors that might keep you in the wrong relationship. But I think it's really important to have enough sort of faith that you're going to find somebody, and enough self-esteem that
you don't have to accept. I feel like since the self-esteem point has been huge for me, because I've realized you just need to love yourself enough, easier said than done, but really love yourself enough to trust that you deserve to be in a really great, right relationship, and that you shouldn't settle, because you are worthy. You really are worthy. And I think that before, my self-esteem and my self-worth just wasn't where it is now. And definitely settled for things in the past where when I look back, I'm like, what on earth were you thinking?
Yeah. And it's also having enough self-confidence in your gut instinct, because people doubt themselves all the time. But if you've been having a niggling feeling for 3 months, 6 months, a year, it's probably there for a reason. And
the gut doesn't lie.
No. And so maybe having some individual or couples therapy to find out what it is, might be really important. And finally, I think some of these relationships that go on and maybe aren't working towards a future, one of you might need to cut the other one free and let them loose out of love. Because if one person in the relationship does want those things, you're only preventing them from getting what they want.
Yeah. I agree. Can you tell that I'm like, okay.
Let's look at some questions now.
Talking about this. Let's go to questions. But no, you're right. And I think I found something that I need to pick up in therapy. We do have some more questions.
Okay.
I just tried to have a quick shuffle through of them whilst you were talking there. And I think that this one looks really interesting, because I think it's something that lots of people might have felt or experienced.
Yeah.
So really appreciate you speaking about loneliness. But I actually find Christmas really hard being at home, and I would really prefer to stay in the city. My home environment is really stressful, and my mum really triggers me by always telling me that I've put on weight or asking when I'm going to settle down. I just find it really distressing. And that's really interesting because I guess it's the opposite of loneliness. It's like you have people around you, but even though you're with them, it's not maybe
not
like
easy.
It's still not easy. So I think that what it just shows that whatever your situation is, you know, the grass isn't necessarily always greener. Potentially.
Exactly.
Do you have any advice for this person?
Yeah, I do have some advice, actually.
That's good. Because if she doesn't, I don't know what we're going to talk about.
So, okay, there's a couple things. So I'm going to assume that this person maybe lives on their own and is an adult. And, you know, when we live on our own, we find our own way of doing things and our own routines, and then we come back into the family home at Christmas time, and you know, we go from sort of independent adult to child to daughter of, you know, or maybe we want to be on an equal playing field with our parents as two adults, and sometimes that can be a bit difficult. We don't necessarily like our parents telling us what to do, and they might get irritated with us, you know, being like, oh, you guys need to tidy up your house or whatever.
Honestly, it's so true. Like, I have lived on my own for 6 years, okay? I've lived around the world on my own, but when I step foot into my family home, I am the child again. The family dynamic is so structurally strong. We are always the children. We always will be the children. And it's back into, mum in the kitchen, you know, don't cook. My mum's like, we can't cook in the kitchen because it's my mum's kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, it's her space in the house. Sorry, mum. But for me, having had my own kitchen for 6 years, it's, there's a lot of tension that can come when you end up back in the family home.
Yeah. And so sometimes it can be helpful to have open and frank, mature discussions with our families about maybe how things could be improved, but just approach them at a time that's not Christmas Day while you're all trying to have a lovely time. There's a saying in psychology which is no problem talk at the table. So make the time for it in a separate time.
And we joke about no talk at the table. I'm going to just put that down. We joke about no talk at the table, but honestly, for me, in terms of active management of triggers, I have learned do not talk about veganism at the dinner table. Do not talk about social activism at the dinner table. Do not pick up my phone at the dinner table. Like, I've acknowledged what the triggers are for me and my family dynamic. And so I guess what you're saying is maybe about kind of like setting your boundaries. And then what I'm saying is maybe that within those boundaries, try to just avoid behaviours that might trigger everyone else potentially.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to have a more challenging discussion with your family, strike while the iron's cold. Don't talk about it at a time that's supposed to be celebratory and fun, because it could just ruin it for everybody. But coming back to that question specifically, sorry, because we've gone on a bit of a tangent. So you were talking about how your mum maybe criticises you and picks up on things that you're sensitive about. I want to introduce a little concept called a stroke and a push. So people can find it quite confrontational if you say, don't do that and whatever. But they can be much more receptive and open if you give them a nice stroke. So what I mean by that...
Not literally.
Well, you could give them a cuddle. Why not? Give them a cuddle if you're allowed to. But what I mean by that is, you know, really acknowledge the wonderful things maybe that your mum does. I have no idea whether your mum does this, but, you know, you could say, Mum, I really am grateful that at Christmas time you go through a lot of effort, home cooking. I love that we can all be together as a family. I like that you give me good advice, and I like that you care about me. And in fact, if you can say 9 good things for one piece of... 9! For one piece of constructive criticism.
Journal that in the morning.
That's actually the ideal ratio for a healthy relationship.
Well, that's interesting, because I feel like I would just be like, Mum, I love you, but I hate it when you ask me X, Y, Z. So is that not the way to do it?
It's okay. I mean,
or is that the stroke? Like,
that's
I
the stroke.
appreciate you,
Yeah, so
you caring for me and that you're trying to help
Yeah.
me, but actually, I really don't want to talk about it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I feel upset about the fact that I've put on weight or I don't have a partner, and I would appreciate if we could avoid those discussions this Christmas just to keep it happy for everyone.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So that was really good. So, you know, it depends on how much stroking you might need to do with that person, because some people aren't very receptive, or they might just, you know, maybe they're just a bit more sensitive. So you do as much stroking as you feel is necessary.
9 strokes and a push.
And a push. And then when you're as Louise just did a really good example, as you're talking
We didn't even prep that.
Yeah, it was
just
very
came
good.
out.
You're learning. Yeah, so as you're trying to set those boundaries, use the I statements. So when you say that I've put on weight, or when am I going to find a partner, it makes me feel not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And it means that I just can't relax and enjoy Christmas with you guys.
Okay.
Keep it concise,
Yeah.
keep it precise.
I love that. And we have got loads more questions, but I'm just conscious of time.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just keep going, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. So the final section that we want to talk to you about today is reflecting on the year that we've just had in a compassionate way and planning for the future.
Yes.
So Louise, you've had a little look at the worksheet.
I have.
What are some of the things that you feel have gone well this year for you?
Okay, so I've actually written them down, and I put highlights from 2020. Starting open house, feeling more purpose in my life, started therapy, lived in a different country, entered into a very transformative relationship that helped me grow and change as a person, continued being sober, found a little bit more balance, particularly with exercise, became closer with my family during lockdown, and I'm proud that I've continued my veganism.
Yeah, excellent. So what's so nice about that is that at the end of the year, sometimes we can look back and think we haven't done enough, we haven't been good enough. But if we reflect on all of those things, it can really help, you know, culture sort of promote gratitude and just help us not be so harsh on ourselves, be more compassionate.
Yeah, like I feel really happy looking at that list as well, because I feel like we're all, you know, you see all over social media these memes that are like, oh, 2020, the year that was wasted, the year that should be written off from history. But if I look at my list of high points and low points, the high points actually really outweigh the low points. So I think I love this idea of looking back compassionately, because it's very easy to get into this mindset where we're all like, I don't want to swear, but you know, oh, 2020 was the worst. Like, what a bad year, what a useless year. And actually, it was just another year in our journey, another armor in our toolkit to teach us that actually life is unpredictable and uncertain.
Yeah, and I think for you, it's also been an opportunity. So I think you started this year with the intention of prioritizing your mental health and your mental well-being, and not prioritizing work so much. And I think coronavirus has meant that in order to survive this year, you've had to keep up with your commitment of, you know, prioritizing your mental health. So you do yoga every morning and those kinds of things. So sometimes with great difficulty comes an opportunity to change, a reminder to change and keep it up.
I love that. I saw last week on social media that someone was calling lockdown love down. And I just thought, you know, it's a bit of a silly name, but actually, if you look at it as this year having just, and next year as well, no matter what it brings, as being just another opportunity to work on yourself. Yes, the external situations around us are unpredictable and uncertain, but hopefully, you know, you have some space that is your own space, you have a house, and you have time. And you have the internet, and there's 1,000 million resources out there that can start your self-development journey or spirituality journey, dependent on what it is that you feel passionate about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I guess this journaling exercise is also important to reflect on maybe what didn't go so well or what didn't go to plan. So what did you come up with?
So I started with chronic pain. So lots of people watching this that already follow me will know that I live with fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain disorder, which is basically just related to stress, but I feel it physically in my body. And it's something I've lived with for a decade. It's been particularly bad over the last 12 to 18 months. So that's definitely been a low point, but I'm looking at at it as something that I still need to master and work through. And I also put, there's definitely been negative traits that still rear their head. So obviously everyone's goal in life is balance. And I don't know if anyone ever actually makes it there, but I have got closer to it than ever before. But there's definitely still things that I have not got balanced. And I think that the working, like the workaholism, I can just work and work and work and take on more work and do more podcasts. And that is something that I definitely still need to work on. They're actually the only two things that I wrote down. I think I really missed my family as well. Like I missed not being able to just go and see my mum and my dad. And I definitely feel like it's sad as you get older, you feel like everyone's getting older and you know one day that your parents won't be with you anymore. And I have felt that more intensely this year, and I've really wanted to be with them and be present and tell them how much I love them. But obviously with coronavirus, it's not been possible. So I think that, you know, something I can take from that is that I just want to nurture those relationships even more next year.
Yeah. I guess the good thing is if you want to find balance, i.e. work less, and you want to nurture those social connections, then that's almost sounding a bit like a goal for next year. What are your goals for next year?
Okay, so I know that we spoke before about goals should be really coming from like internal locus of success rather than like being judged around metrics that society puts on you. Because I think before my targets would have been to do this in business or make this much money or travel to this many countries. Whereas I have put continue to pursue purpose and meaning through Open House by helping people and contributing and giving back to the world. Nurture my friendships and my family more. Master my pain and live a more pain-free life, and just a little bit more balance.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're goals, but that's what I felt like I'm looking for from next year. Or I want to focus on.
I think those are really good goals. And, you know, when you're looking at this worksheet and you're trying to set goals for the new year, try to make them smart. So, you know, specific as possible, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time limited, so that you kind of have a chance of achieving them. But I think also sometimes goals can feel maybe a bit tokenistic, and we can forget about them come, you know, the end of January. So one tip I have for you is about making things a habit, making them part of your lifestyle and your routine so that they don't fall off the radar.
Yeah, I think you're right. I haven't put like times against any of those. But actually, when I look back at this year, it's the small things that I did every day that added up to the big things. So it's almost like taking them and then breaking it down. Like, okay, how do I want to nurture my friends and family more? Okay, well, maybe I'll go on 2 walks every week and I'll go and see my parents. You know, it sounds a bit like rigid, but maybe putting those boundaries in, for me at least, not boundaries, like targets would help me like get there. Otherwise, all of a sudden it's August and you're like, oh, bugger, half the year's gone and I haven't actually done anything.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of my clients was saying that she was feeling that she was starting to sort of not spend quality time with her parents anymore. So they decided to reinstate the Sunday roast, which was a tradition that she always liked. And so now every Sunday she goes with her family to her parents for Sunday roast. And it's just part of their routine now.
I love that. That's so nice. I'm aware that we are coming up to an hour. So I know we've got so much more that we'd love to talk about, but if you're happy, should we do one more question? Does that work for you?
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. I always find it's so difficult to pick. Okay. I love Christmas. It's my favourite time of the year, but this year with all the restrictions, it's just not going to be as fun as usual. I'm desperately missing the pubs and bars being open and the Christmas parties. Any advice?
Yeah. So, you know, I do empathise with this person because, Christmas is a time of celebration, of, you know, letting loose and having a good time. But I'm also hearing, you know, maybe it's about drinking and having fun in that way. And
why does drinking have to equate to fun? Because it doesn't. I promise you, like, if you want to listen to anything that we've done on sobriety, you don't have to drink to have fun. But I know that it's part of society. But I would just urge you as well to realise that don't have that mindset that just because these places are closed that you can't have fun. There's so many other ways that you can connect with people and have fun.
Yeah. So of course there are a lot of losses. We can't go to a pub. We can't have a big New Year's Eve celebration.
Oh yeah, that's going to be weird, isn't it? I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm so old, I just don't even party anymore. I don't think about it.
But maybe, you know, what you love about Christmas is feeling close and connected to people. So you can still do that. And maybe this is also an opportunity to find a new way of having fun, maybe a more wholesome way of having fun. So rather than rewarding yourself with binge drinking, maybe you could reward yourself with a Peloton bike.
So expensive though. If anyone wants to buy and send me a Peloton bike,
Yeah.
I would happily take that.
But I mean, there are still ways of treating yourself that are more wholesome.
I agree. I feel like, you know, food.
Yes.
You can still enjoy that with family and have an amazing home cooked meal, or watch Christmas movies, or if you really must, I guess you can get drunk at home with your family. It's just different, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's very good advice from me, if I'm totally honest.
What, to get drunk at home?
Yeah, I just think that I think my piece of advice would be just to take every day as it comes, and really just see, you know, what you can do each day that can add a little bit of joy to your life. And it's going to be different joy to what it was before. But I think hopefully acknowledging that it's going to be different, but it can still be beautiful. Is
Exactly.
really nice.
And what you were mentioning there about sort of getting drunk at home, just because it's a habit or a tradition, doesn't mean that you can't change it.
Yeah.
You know, Louise, you did that, where just gradually the habit of drinking crept up and up to the point where it was unhelpful.
Yeah.
But you can just make a decision not to drink during the week.
And actually use this as an amazing chance to like test not drinking, or I love it, looking at it as like an opportunity rather than it being a restriction.
Yeah.
Okay.
And moderation can be fun.
Yes. Yes. I would love us to keep going through these, but I am aware of time. So at this point, we should probably wrap up. And I just want to say a big thank you for you and everything that you bring to these sessions. I feel like it's so helpful for me and everyone at home.
Well, thank you for bringing your honesty and your openness. And I just want to wish you all at home such a happy Christmas. Take this as an opportunity to rest and recuperate, turn off your phone and your laptop, and have a great new year as well.
Yeah, I agree. Make sure you connect with those around you, check in on people, ask how they're doing. Just be honest with yourself about how you're feeling. And yeah, next year is going to be a good year. And we're going to be here throughout with lots of exciting things for you. So we hope you have an amazing Christmas and a great new year. And we will speak to you very soon.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.